Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. It wasn't long ago that I was a freshman at SUU, sitting in one of those chairs thinking, man, would never be on stage. But time flies, and things change. And I'm so grateful to this university and the opportunities they've given me, and the person that they've helped me become. I hope you all know how truly special SUU is, and there's no place I'd rather be. How many people in this room found yourselves saying these 4 words last year? I do not understand. I do not understand. Well, me too. These 4 words are something I found myself saying over and over and over again. We all know last year was the epicenter of the most stark polarization, both politically and socially, that our country's seen in a long time. It was during this time I took a good look at the world around me. The divisiveness, the lack of communication, the hate. And I didn't understand. I didn't understand how people felt certain ways. I didn't understand how people believed certain ways. I didn't understand their reality. I didn't understand their perspective. Perspective itself was a word I heard so frequently, a word I used frequently. In a sociological context, having a difference in perspective is how we conceptualize the discrepancies we have in our outlooks politically, culturally, and socially. To describe a point of view, perspective is a non-physical concept. We can't see it, can't be held in our hands or replicated. However, we know it exists because it's the only rational way to explain how we can all be a part of the human experience, coexisting on the same planet in different realities. But what exactly is human perspective? I felt like I couldn't understand another person's perspective or recognize the limitations in my own until I had a better answer to this question. I wanted to understand it better. The events unfolding in the world around me exposed that there was a gap, and we needed to understand it better. So that's what I sought out to do. Over the past year, I have dedicated my time to the study of perspective. I have interviewed nearly 100 individuals across various demographics, individuals that are different races, have different occupations, belong to different religions, identify with different genders and sexual orientations, that have different political outlooks and different cultures. Today I'm going to tell you what I've learned in my search for understanding human perspective, why it's important, and how these principles can help us move forward collectively. First, in order to begin to understand human perspective, I felt like I needed to identify some parameters for measurement. So I headed to my Google search, typed in measurement of perspective, sifted through some photos, and there were a couple of simple images that sparked something in me. Both artistically and mathematically, perspective is measured by depth and dimension. It's an artist's ability to take an inanimate 2D object, see depth, and translate that depth in a way that represents reality. Geometrically, the x and y axis represent the first 2 dimensions, while the z axis represents the third. So I thought, okay, I know human perspective is insanely complex, and psychologists propose there are a number of contributing factors. But if I could reduce it down to 3 axes like I see here on this plane, it would be so much easier to understand. So I began talking to people, asking them about their perspective, trying to identify the 3 things that stood out, that were consistent across all of them. I reflected into my own life and thought, what are the contributing elements that make up the way I view the world? Well, here's what I came up with. Here is my hypothesis for the measurement of human perspective. Starting with the first 2 dimensions, I propose x is our inherited reality and y is our core identity. These 2 dimensions are the inception of our being. Our inherited reality is oftentimes passed down from our parents. It's what initially shapes the way we view the world and our place in it, what we know to be true or false, right or wrong. It's the environment we grow up in, the people around us in our adolescence, the worldviews they possessed and the ones they passed on to us. This reality is not one we have discretion over or consciously sought after. It's the first one that is given to us. The second dimension, our y-axis, is our core identity. Beyond our physical attributes, our core identity is the foundation of who we are. Elements of our core identity include our perceived sense of truth, purpose, and significance, both to ourselves and others. It's how our minds work, how we think, how we learn. Seeing things through a lens is common verbiage used when talking about perspective. And I had considered the combination of X and Y to be my pair of glasses. Because I realized in order to understand how an individual interprets the third dimension of their perspective, I must first put on the proper prescription to see. I needed a greater understanding of who they are and where they came from. I needed to have context. So in the first half of our interview, I would spend time asking questions that uncovered X and Y. Questions such as, tell me about the environment you grew up in. Tell me about your parents, what your relationship with them was like. What was the dynamic of your household like? Who influenced the way you view the world? Then I would ask questions about them. Super simple questions that didn't require much thought at all, such as, tell me about your overall understanding of the universe and our collective purpose here on Earth. Just kidding, that one took a long time to answer. Questions such as, what do you believe your individual purpose is? Beyond the titles you are given, who are you? What are you afraid of being judged for? By having them answer these questions, I was able to gain context into the third dimension of their perspective. The third dimension, our z-axis, is our experiences. Experiences are where we gain the depth in our perspective. An experience is something that occurs every moment of our existence. In fact, we're having one right now. Experiences expand the realm of our reality, and they can be passive or active, depending on your level of awareness. It's your choice. Experiences come in all shapes and sizes over time, compiling and creating what I call an experience sequence. And because the other two dimensions that frame the experience, an individual's inherited reality and core identity, can never be created identical, much like DNA, all experience sequences are unique. They are one of a kind. So with this hypothesis, I got to the point where I felt like I was beginning to understand. We had the X, Y, and Z axis. Made sense. Seemed simple enough, right? But as I continued analyzing, it occurred to me that the nature of the relationship between these three dimensions didn't look like this. It looked more like this. I was initially observing inherited reality and core identity as constants framing the experience. But that left no room for growth. I began reflecting on the past year I spent interviewing people, the experiences I had, and how much my perspective evolved. Like everybody else, I have an inherited reality and a core identity that shapes the way I viewed my experiences. But as I had new experiences, listened to other people's experiences, I began to understand their reality. And because I understood their reality, my reality evolved. And because my reality evolved, so did my core identity and what I knew to be true. And because my core identity evolved, so did my perspective. Because perspective, unlike other non-physical concepts like gravity or time, is something that we have the ability to expand. I realized that perspective wasn't just measured by these dimensions. It expanded through the reflection of them. They were constantly changing as a result of each other. And new information, new people, new perspectives, new experiences were the catalyst for that expansion. I was still me. I still believed what I believed. But my level of understanding grew. The range of my perspective grew. Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr. once said, "One's mind, once expanded by a new idea, can never return to its original dimensions." Well, the same can be said of one's perspective, once it understands another person's experiences. So by identifying these three dimensions and how they process in relation to one another, I had a better understanding of the framework of human perspective. I understood how to learn about perspective, how to expand my perspective. But the component I was still missing, what I believe to be the solution to finding true understanding, was the overlap. What do all perspectives have in common, no matter how different? Where can we all find agreement? Emotion. What gives our perspective life, what gives it color, is that every experience in our unique sequence leads back to one of the core emotions. An emotion that every living, breathing, human being feels. I gained a glimpse towards true understanding into nearly 100 individuals' perspectives by identifying with them through emotion. As I listened to their experiences, I too have felt pain, anger, judgment. But I've also felt love, excitement, passion, strived towards fulfillment, and sought acceptance. I gained an understanding for every single one of them because the emotion behind their experience was something that I too had felt at some point in time. We were all united. We all wanted to be heard. We all wanted to belong. So why is understanding the dimensions of perspective, how to expand our perspective, and finding agreement important today? It's important because the absence of understanding is tearing us apart. We have lost the belief that as a collective society, we have commonalities we can agree on that outweigh our differences. And it shows on a national level. But human perspective is beautiful. It's an expression of our past, our reality, our ambition, our vision of what is possible. It is all of our abilities to see things through a different lens that allows us to create the full picture. This ability to interpret the world in different ways is what drives innovation, creativity, and ultimately what advances society forward. But it takes conscious effort from me, from you, from every person in this room, to listen and learn about other perspectives, broaden our experiences, and actively seek understanding. Thank you.